Okay, welcome to part 2 of this Revell F-15E build. So now we've got the wings on and we're all set like that. So the next point we've got to take care of is these intakes. Now they come in two parts, but what you do get is some nasty ejector pin marks which are just in here. They're quite a nuisance one to get rid of, but in some ways all we do, little file like this, and we're just going to file them out. With the kit itself, most of the areas, all the pin marks are very, very shallow and can be taken out with a relatively little amount of time and a little bit of sanding. But the thing is, if you're not going to have intake covers over the top and you're perhaps going to have them just inside or not at all even, then obviously you're going to have to take care of them. So starting with a coarse and then work your fine and then work onto your sponges. Keep it flat as you go and you can take care of them like that. Then all we simply do is we have these parts here. Then we test fit to make sure we're all okay with the joint, and if we're all happy, all we'll do with our thin cement, just put a drop and let the capillary action drag itself down the length. Okay, and then we're just going to marry this up. So the join mark is the rear, so it's flush with the back. Then once that's in, we can just put a little bit more just down there, and we'll leave that to one side just to dry. Now I've done this one already, so all you're going to do is make sure you've got any little plug marks off. And there's a little bit of flashing on the edge here, so we just take that off and then run around with a sponge. So okay, next bit is to fit on the intakes. There's a square tab which fits into in here. Now if we just bring you in a little bit, what actually happens is literally just slide over the top and drop in. It's that simple. The only problems you might have, sometimes you get a little bit of flashing down here in this gap, this top one, as you see that slit just there. Make sure that's clean so it can actually come in and fit up nice and tight. Now because these actually move, there's a slight overlap as it would in real life. They would actually drop down, but obviously these are fixed in one position. The only other thing you're going to have is literally just inside there above my finger, you can see that little join. So if you're going to have an intake cover, you won't have to worry about it, but if you are, that little join really you're going to have to, it's just this lower part if you like, to just a little bit of CA perhaps and a sanding job, or see if the liquid weld will hold or something like that. But it's pretty straightforward and they're a nice fit, they go on nice and clean. So we'll get those in place and then we can run around and have a little tidy up and a sound of all the leading edges and those things, and we'll get it all rescribed and then we can move on. Okay, so what I've just done, I've got rid of the centre seam running through the canopy and masked up. Now there's a tutorial on the intermediate videos which covers all of that, and we'll be getting those in soon. Right, so next I went round and I've just rescribed any panel lines that we've lost. Certainly these ones here where you're going to see leading edges of wings. I've just taken care of anything like that, so it's all nice now. Now it's always tricky getting these fast packs. These are fuel tanks on the F-15 that literally strap to the side. Now the way I do it, I just place a rubber band over and pop them in like so. Now the reason for doing it this way is that you can hold them in place like so and see where how they fit and how they're going to line up and everything else like that. Now the best way to start, the way I do it, is obviously the front end here, just in front of the gun bay here between the intake, is where the start of the fast pack goes, and then it sits back. Now there's contours in here which sort of mould it all in and everything else like that and keeps it on there. But if you pop a rubber band in, you'll get a nice good seam line down the bottom here, so you could weld that up now with some poly, liquid poly, and then work your way around. And then for this front bit, what I tend to do is I tend to put a tiny bit of super glue on a cocktail stick, pop it in there, and then just hold it in place, because that one there is always the nasty join, this one at the front. But sometimes it's easier to get this seam back here working well. So as I say, the liquid thin capillary action all the way down and let it bite itself in there just like that. So we're going to do that now. So we're going to do the old touch and flow technique and not going to be brushing this around we're just going to touch the brush on and let the capillary action work its way down. Now in reality there's a small rubber seal that this actually bolts to that obviously stops the air and anything getting in between it. There's an actual line that works all the way down there, like a little panel line, which shows it for that. So if you're sanding and cleaning up the part, don't take that off because that's actually part of it. But certainly let the capillary action work. Because it's on a rubber band, it's slightly pulling it in, which will give it that slight little ridge. But that's fine because, as I say, reality is on the real aircraft it has that rubber. So it will give that nice look without actually having to do anything. So I'm going to work a bit of glue around both of them, both sides, and then we'll take care of those front parts, the tricky parts we were talking about. Right, we've got this in. What I actually did is, say, we've just spoken about, we just put it in. What I've actually done is crossed over the bands, and then what it'll do, it'll put pressure in these two areas just here, just to pull those in, because there's a small little gap to get it in. Now as it's slightly soft, I give it another nudge, and then whilst it sort of bubbled up a bit everywhere, with the liquid poly went along and brushed it down there to get rid of all of those things, and it will make a nice tight seam. As I say, I haven't done these top areas down here yet, all these leading edges. We're going to let that one dry for 10 minutes, unband it, check it, and then we can go back then and have a look at those leading edges bits on the front here, and we can actually super glue them down in place. Right, as those bits are drying, what we can actually do is move on to a little tricky area, which is the actual burner cans themselves at the back. Now I've done this one already, and what will happen is it fits in with this one here, and then obviously you have your actuators on there. Now one of the weak points with the actual kit itself is that you've actually got these little ejector pin marks just in the back. Let me bring it a little bit closer. So I don't know if you can see those there, those little marks, and the thing is they stand out a bit like the old proverbial sore thumb. So not often I actually get a metal file out, but I've got a metal file here, quite a thin one. And just on that line, we're just going to file them down into the plastic. They're very shallow, so it's not worth physically filling them. So it's easier to use a file to take them out like that. So all we do, we just file those down. Doesn't take many passes, because I say they're very shallow anyway. Then once you've done, if you get your extra thin glue and just give it a brush, it will just help remold any bits in there. So there's that one taken care of, and obviously we'll do all the others, and then we'll get them together until you're into a position like that, and then you have all three in there and it's done, and then we can just put the actuators on there. It's a long boring job, but then put them all around there, and then we can paint actually this area up. Now the thing is, because of the way the colouring actually works, this band here tends to be a lighter colour than the actual this part in here. Now I know some people do it all the same colour, whichever. I find it's easier to put it all together, then you can obviously mask this area up around the band afterwards than it would be to do it now. So it's personal choice on that part. Okay, so here's the thing. Tamiya extra thin glue comes in these very nice pots, which are very hard to knock over, give them their due. They're, you know, pretty sturdy stuff. But the trouble I always find is when you get to sort of this level where you're quarter of the way through, you can't get enough on your brush to get it in. Now the trouble is though, when you've got a brand new one, you tend to have all loads of it, because it's over the top, it flows down the actual brush itself, ends up flooding your area. So what I always do, I just have a couple of pots on the go. I've got a nice new one here, and all I actually do is tip in a little bit, just in there like that, just to keep me at the right level for actually having the right amount on the brush. And obviously I like it to come to about here on the end of the brush and no further up. So it's on there, you get a brush full without having too much. So there's a quick little top tip for you. Okay, one of the most boring bits of doing the kit is putting these actuators onto the end of the nozzles like this. Now there's no way around this, because even if you bought the resin, the Aries ones, which are lovely sets as well, you still have to put all these in. And it is really a boring thing to do. Literally it's just one at a time, placing it in between at the back here, and you keep going. So if I show you what I mean, the way I do it, literally I've cleaned up the parts first, and that's a job on itself. So if I bring you in a little bit, And then all we'll do, I put a drop of Tamiya thin, both ends like that, and then picking them up and carefully positioning them so they don't ping off. You can go around, you can use tweezers like this as well. Sometimes it's better to place the back part first or the front part, and you go on like that, and we're going to work our way all the way around the entire nozzle set. As I say, it's quite a boring thing and takes quite a long time, but it gives a great result in the end, because it does look really quite spectacular when it's all dry brushed and painted up. Right, all we've done is I've doubled this band over, this first one, to increase the pressure. Now, if we'd done that beforehand, it might have pulled apart a bit further down. So by doing it now, because it's dry, it will hold in. And what that actually does is it helps to make this seam along here a lot better and pull it all in together. Sorry, that's the dog. Right. So what we have is quite a nice little join at this front bit here. And if I pull you in a little bit, and you can see what I mean a bit better. As you can see, it does hang out a little bit. It just needs pushing in. Now, two ways to do it. You can either put a drop of super glue in there and then just hold and pinch together. If it's a pretty close seam and you're not worried about it too bad, you can actually do it with a clamp. Like so. You can get quite a soft clamp, like one of these clothing ones, and from the inside, and just hold it in like that, and just to pinch it a little bit. The trouble is, all the time you're putting pressure on it, because it's hollow, it could be pulling away from somewhere else. So what we're going to do with this one, because it's quite close, we're just going to put a drop or two along this top edge and let the top wells itself. Like so. And then we're just working our way down the front edge and along the bottom. You know, the other way, of course, you could just hold it, but it might take a bit of time doing it that way. So it's easier just to pop a clamp on like this, and let it do all the work. Now, there is going to be a tiny little join at that very top, but we can take care of that with a little bit of sanding and a little bit of CA glue. But that's that one on, and then we've just got to do the same for the other side. There again, if it's a nice join, which this is, then you're okay. So we're just going to run that glue along this top part. And along the front. Edge like so. And then we're going to do another clamp, same thing, just to hold it in. Now, as you say, if you do get that little, leave it for a few moments to go with the liquid poly, then pull, and you get that little line of melted glue, that's good, because on the real thing, that's that rubber grommet that goes all the way around that we're talking about. So I'll glue up and check all the other seams, and we'll move on. Okay, so whilst those bits are drying, what we'll do is we're going to fix on the canopy to the actual activating part itself. I've just sprayed that black. And so all we'll do, the usual way I do my canopies, cocktail stick with the actual normal CA glue, and we just go on there, and you sort of roll it backwards so it gets the glue to all flow on. Now this canopy's been dipped, so theoretically we could have just gone ahead and gone with a super glue or any type of glue and not really worried about it fogging, but I still never ever trust it 100%, because there's nothing worse than, you know, you've done your canopy, all done, looks beautiful, you unmask and there it is, fogged up. And that's exactly what happened when I did the Harrier. Okay, so we're just going to stick that on there. A little bit of movement with the PVA, you can slide it up and down till you've got it into your exact position. When you're happy, as we are like that, we take a cotton bud, like this, we just lick, give it some moisture, and a bit like when you do your mastic, we just drag it along, one pass, then the next, and we get that nice band of white PVA left, and what that'll do is take care of any gaps that are there. Then we'll just do the same on the other side. All in there is pull it up, drag it round a bit. There we go, just like so, and then we'll just place it flat down and let that dry, like so. What you also can do is pop a bit of weight onto the top of it just to hold it flat and to make sure it's all on there as you would hope. So that's that done. We've still got the other parts drying over there, over here. Now basically what I actually did, I cheated a little bit, shall we say, because on this front bit here, I suddenly thought after we spoke that about the clamps, all I actually did was put the tip of the clamp on these clamps here just to do that bit, which took care of that. And I'm hoping now it's sort of dry and now ready for the unveiling, so to speak. So what we'll do is take off these diagonal ones first, like so. These rear ones, the tops, just like that. And we can have a look underneath and we see if there's any gaps. If you've got any gaps and things now, you can actually go round now with your bit more glue and fill them in. But touching wood, that's all fine, it's all perfect, it's all in there nice. Now all we've got now is two little gaps each side, which are there deliberately, which is this one right here, and it's where the rubber band went round, because I didn't want the actual glue capillary acting around the band. So we're just going to need a drop in here, just to do that hole there. And the same on the other side, it's just where the band's set. I was expecting it. So that's that, and as you can see, we're now to the point where we're actually looking like an F-15. We've got tailplanes to go on, but I'm going to leave them off so it's easier to mask these metal areas down the back. So next thing to do is to get the canopies on. So I've just done that one there. We're going to pop this one on the front as well, and we're going to get them glued on and installed and in there firm, so it's all sealed up. And then next we're going to move on to just checking all over the entire thing, making sure we're happy with all the joins. Any panel lines we've accidentally sanded off or filled in with bits of debris and dust, literally we'll just get our P-cutter or your rescribing tool and just run them along those lines just to clean out anything we might have filled up with either glue running along or actually filler dust, bits and pieces like that. Other little things we're going to take care of is little rivets. Obviously we've lost a few little rivets at the front, so we're just going to do those. They're just little tiny jobs that take a bit of time just to get all right, and so we're in position. Right, as we can see, we're all on now. Masked up, canopies on. It's a bit of a tricky fit because of the way that the resin, obviously all the parts will fit. It will be done with it opening, showing the cockpit. But because I'm worried about obviously things pinging off, what I've done is I've undermasked it on the inside with masking tape over all the instrument panels and everything, and then I've actually got a bit of blue tack and then it on top again, so it's sort of double protecting it because I didn't want any overspray getting over all that nice panel work we did. So that's done. So now we're certainly looking a bit more sort of F-15E ish. So the next major point is getting on the hard points. Now on the underside here you've got the two long rails and then the short ones. Now they do go in an order, so make sure you do get the order on right, otherwise they'll look odd. You've got these little locating tabs just on here. Obviously you have a left and a right the way it's scooped. Now to get a good fit on these, it's one of those ones where it's sort of dry fitting is essential to see how it's all going to fit and how it sits, because you don't want any gaps now, because obviously when we get the glue in the underside here, we want it to look like a nice smooth join and not perhaps too speckly. So a way to go around that, if you fit, I've obviously done a little bit of sanding on these to get them to the right sort of height. And if you get a band, just for this nose, pop it over the nose, just like that. So it doesn't have to be on tight, but it'll do, it'll hold this front part in, just like that. So when you look straight down on it, it's square. Otherwise it might sort of jiggle around a bit, but it'll hold this front part in. So then what we'll do, it's one of those things where you just run out of hands, and rubber bands are always quite good. Okay, I'm going to start at the back, just place it on the back and let the capillary action flow down across that entire join. And then we're just going to do some touch and flows. Nice generous amount on the brush. And let it flow down the entire length of it, if you know what I mean. So that's that. And then obviously we'll just do a little bit on the inside. Talking of glues, when you're doing these types of things, another way you can do this, if you do want some a thicker join perhaps, or it's a particularly nasty joint, or you know, something like that, you could always use a Revell Contactica glue, and they're the ones that come with these needles on the end, and then you can literally glue go along with it. And then if you get your liquid poly with a brush, just brush that in and you'll lose that glue mark. So that's another quick little tip there on how to do that. But that's a nice seam down that edge. You can't see any gaps. We can't see any gaps on the bottom, and that band's just going to hold that. Now we don't want to knock it around or anything, so we're just going to do one at a time. I'm going to put the other one on in a minute when that one's dried, and then I'll get these hard points installed. Right, all I've actually done so far is spray the black for the outside, so obviously when you look from the inside it's black, my usual technique for doing it. And also I sprayed some white into the wheel wells, so they're ready, so we can get some covers on there. Either we'll make them out of blue tack or a bit of foam, so that'll go in there and bung them up so it's all ready for spraying. So now here we go. We're all ready now for the primer coat to go all over this. Once we've got these areas masked up and obviously the air intakes, and we can get going with all the masking and move on. Now at the same time, I just did those in the spray bay. So if we just, I've actually sprayed these, they're still wet. These are just the cones that we were doing a moment ago. I've sprayed them black on the outside, and in the inside, because I had that white going, I've done it as the actual flat white to make that ceramic plate look that you see on F-15s that they have. So that's literally just flat black all on the outside, and then we've obviously done the white on the inside. Done it to both of those purely because I had the black out for doing the top of the canopy and I had the white out doing for the wheel wells. So that's why I've done those, but there'll be more on those later. But that's just to bring you up to speed there. So that's basically it. We're just going to let those bits dry off. We'll get it masked up. We'll get a primer coat on it, and we're off for pre-shading.